morning. I'm Joe Dana. Welcome to the homestead. We had a we had a surprise visitor the other day. I was up early before the sun, and I was letting the chickens out of their coop. Their yard is adjacent to the orchard. And I noticed motion up to the side, and I look, and there's a horse in the orchard. We don't have a horse. You don't have a horse. Where'd the horse come from? I was a little concerned about it's going to be fun, hair. I was a little concerned about my young fruit trees, and she was just very, very sweet, gentle horse, little mare. And so I coaxed her over to some fresher grass with hay and some water. And Cal made kind of a run line for her, put up a line in the trees and got a rope on her so that she wouldn't wander off too much. We did end up putting her in with the goats next door for a little while, which the goats were not particularly excited about. Just saying. Our German Shepherd was very excited, but he wanted to play with the big dog. No, don't play with the big dog. Just leave the big dog alone. Anyway, we put the word out on the neighborhood grapevine, and within a couple of hours, she was reunited with her people. So that was a fun little unexpected twist to a morning earlier this week. But I wanted to talk today about why we live off-grid. And I think this is kind of an important topic to consider. We had visitors the other day, not related to the horse. Had some family that was visiting from out of state. And we are a bit of an anomaly among our circle and our family because of the way we live. And we live differently than even, a lot of homesteaders do. But there's a reason that we're off-grid. And she asked the question. She was looking at how we collect rainwater and how we generate power and grow our own food and all that stuff. And she was genuinely interested. Why would you make this choice to live off-grid? And so I told her a story that I want to convey to you because I think it's an important consideration. For 15 years, I lived outside of a town, probably 8,000 people, on the Central Oregon coast. I was next to a lake, next to the ocean, and I had 16 plus acres. And on this property, I had a very deep well, like a 400 some foot well with a 3,600 gallon cistern and 2 year-round spring-fed creeks to the property. And a previous owner had tied the house into municipal water. So I had a ridiculous, embarrassing riches of water. I had way more water than I could ever use. And there was nobody downstream from me. My creeks fed into a lake, which fed directly into the ocean. So it's not like I needed to conserve any of that water in that situation. And living in an environment where you got 70 to 80 inches of rain a year, yeah, that spring water was absolutely wonderful. But from the time I moved onto that property, I started getting letters from the city telling me that I needed to sign an annexation agreement or they'd take away my water. Now, half acre of that 16, maybe up to an acre, was actually within the urban growth boundary of the city. But their letters didn't distinguish that. It was, annexing the property, not just the section that was within the urban growth boundary. And there's no way in the world that I was going to sign a blank check for the city to incorporate it and charge me for 16 acres or even a half acre at city property tax rates. I lived out in the county. My rates were much, much lower. And they were timber conservation and farm and, all that other stuff. And you got to understand that this town used water as an extortion tool. There was a neighborhood that was outside of city limits, but it was a developed neighborhood. And the city wanted to annex it. And that's how they managed it. There were like three homeowners that were holdouts that didn't sign that annexation agreement. And they were basically going to shut off water for that entire area, that entire neighborhood of 100 plus houses because of three holdouts. And they started this kind of peer pressure campaign to get those people to sign off so that they could do it without, having to go through more official means. Really sleazy stuff. I was not impressed. But they would send me this letter and I would ignore it. And then they'd send me another letter and I would just call them back and say no. And then they'd send me a pink letter as if that had more force, a pink letter. And I would say, see that ocean over there? Go jump in it. I'm not signing this thing. And they would threaten me. And this went on for 15 years, the entire time that I was there. And they would, they'd give it a rest of a couple of years, and then they'd start sending them to me again. And I'd be like, we've done this before, kids. Not happening. and it was just this comical, ridiculous routine of, city's going to threaten me, I'm going to say no, and come and take it. Just come and take it. You want your damn meter? Get your meter. It's a half-hour project for me to go from city water to well water. Come and take it. And this had been going on for a number of years. And a friend of mine was the head of the city crew that would have been responsible for pulling the meter. And I just asked him one day, I said, Chuck, what would it cost the city to pull my meter? And he was pretty sickened by what was going on. And he said, minimum $10,000. I was like, okay, so I'm paying $43 a month for the privilege of having city water that smells like chlorine that I don't even need. And they're threatening me constantly with taking it away. And I have all of this other source of water that I could use at any time. And I threw it back in the city. I just said, forget it. I'm not playing this game. You want your meter, come and take your damn meter. I don't care. And it taught me two things. One, being in that position where you're not dependent on those systems gives you far more power to tell the system to go and, stick your annexation agreement wherever you want. I've got some suggestions. But it also really reinforced with me how ubiquitous those systems are that tie us into a system of control, right? And so we've made the choice going forward not to be tied into those systems ever again. And, there are some that we have to kind of play with, but I don't ever want to be in a system where my rates can be increased and I have absolutely no say over that, right? I don't want to be in a system that can control or manipulate how I choose to live, right? So utility systems are generally monopolies. That means they have total control. And if they don't like how you're doing something, you don't have a lot of options otherwise. So when we moved here and we actually looked into, what would it take to tie into a grid? Well, for the $20,000 that we were quoted to get power to this site, I can buy a lot of solar panels and a lot of batteries and a high quality inverters and all of the charge controllers and all that stuff. I can buy a really good system for that and never have to pay a utility bill on top of it. So we have cell service with unlimited data, and it's $25 a month. I can hotspot it. I can, it uses the same, Verizon network. So the coverage is good out here. $25 a month. Great. I can afford that. I don't even have to work to afford that. That's fantastic. We have satellite internet out here, so we're not actually plugged into something. And we now share that with a neighbor. So our bill is half of what it was. Our solar system, something that we invested in, that barring a really serious hailstorm, we're good to go. We've got a generator backup. We're dependent on fuel for the generator, but we have a lot more control over when we buy fuel, how much we run it. And we are not running so many systems that we're actually having to use a lot of power. So we would like to make our solar system, our power system, a little more robust. And that's something that we're going to be working on. But even the property that we bought, it's out in the county, it's rural. My property taxes on 8+ acres is less than $20 a year. And in Texas, that's probably going to go down. It might even just disappear entirely. But because we live in our schoolie and we're not actually building a house, that's not likely to go up. In fact, it's, like, as I said, it's probably going to go down in time. So that's, to me, that was really important, to get out of that system of control. And in sharing that story with this visitor, this family member, I don't think she ever even considered that the systems that we are so dependent on have an element of control designed into them. And I'm all about freedom. Everything that I do is about being free and having options. And talking with my good friend who's same age as me, a little bit younger, she's, working feverishly trying to set herself up to be able to retire with a comparable standard of living of what she has now. And we've chosen to do things very differently. We have an affordable property that we own outright, low property taxes, very, very low overhead. And that overhead, the month-to-month stuff, the more we develop this property, the less that's going to cost us, or less outlay we're going to have. So by the time we get to retirement age, whatever that is, and I really don't agree with our concept of retirement. I think it's just a different chapter. It's the idea of sitting in front of television and, wasting the last 30 years of your life. It doesn't appeal. It really doesn't appeal to me. Being free from any system that has the ability to control you, either through a monthly expense, increase in rates, usage, the fight that I put up when they started to force smart meters, and on my farm before. No, I don't care what you have to do. I don't want that. I don't want the constant monitoring of what I use. I mean, they can tell when you're home and what you're doing and, how much air conditioning you're running or whatever. No, too much. That is too much intrusion into my life and too much power to influence how I live my life. So that's kind of my flipping the bird and FU and rebellion against that system, is to just unplug from it. And the freedom that comes from that, the power and authority that you have over your own life because you're not participating in that system, is tremendous. And it's a tremendous peace of mind. Anyway, I thought I'd talk about that today. Bug. And I'd be interested in your thoughts on this subject. If you're off-grid, if you're thinking about being off-grid, and what your thoughts are on that system of being tied into something that you can't control. Anyway, something to think about. I hope you have a tremendous day. It's gorgeous today. Oh, so excited. Today's an outside work in the shade kind of day. Beautiful. Have a great day. We'll see you again.